Hey guys, and welcome to Junkbox Gaming. My name is Nathan, and I'm gonna try to do a deck profile today. And I've been wanting to do one since December or January, but I never got around to it. And I was gonna do a Morphtronics, but that deck kind of got dismantled, and I wasn't using any Yu-Gi-Oh websites at the time, so I never really saved it. So I made a new deck, the UAs, and I played it and I really like how it plays. It reminds me of Spike Brothers from Cardfight Vanguard, both in terms of they're both athletes. Spike Brothers is football players and these are baseball, soccer, basketball. But they basically do the same thing, which is tag in, tag out. So it was cool. And I don't know why I wanted to make this deck, but I'm glad I did. And Spike Brothers was probably a big reason because they're really pretty bogus in Vanguard too. But this deck isn't as bogus, and it's more like a rogue deck. It's not like Nekroz or BA or Satellar Knights, that a lot of people run. So, not a lot of people side against this deck, but it's still really fun to play with, and it can be challenging to play with, too. So, what all these UAs do is they have hand abilities that return a UA from the field to the hand to special out one. So, for instance, midfielders on the field, you can use Mighty Slugger's ability to return him midfielder to the hand to special summon him. So they're not on field abilities, the special summoning. And you can do it, you can only do it once per turn, summoning them that way from the hand. And you can't replace a midfielder with a midfielder. So that's the only restrictions on it. But first off, I have 3 UA midfielders, and this is the only level 4 in the deck. There's no 1, 2, or 3. There's only a level 4 for the UAs, at least, I mean. So, you kind of, want to get him first turn, so you can actually start doing your combo plays, because everybody else is 5 and higher. But, what you do with midfielder is you play him, and he has a cool ability where he can switch out once per turn during either player's turn. So, if you have a midfielder and a Mighty Slugger out, you can attack with midfielder, attack with Mighty Slugger, and then you can switch Mighty Slugger out with midfielder's ability during the battle phase to summon a rival rebounder, to get another attack, or anything else, it's really cool. So that's his ability. UA Mighty Slugger is kind of like an Armades, and he's level 5, 2300 attack. So he's a little weaker, but if he attacks, your opponent can't activate cards or effects until the end of the damage step. So if you're worried about back row or flip effects or anything, he basically just cancels anything they would do. So he's a safe bet to get out. But he's level 5, so you need a special or tribute. That's how all these cards are. Next up is UA Rival Rebounder. Now, I run him and Mighty Slugger at 3. And midfielder, because you need midfielder at 3. Mighty Slugger at 3. You can cut him down to 2, but I like running 3, because then you got like 3 Armades you can get out. And Rival Rebounder is great because you can special summon him, but if you special summon him during your opponent's turn or normal summon him, you can special summon a UA from the graveyard or the hand. So, say you tribute midfielder for Rival Rebounder, you can special summon midfielder from your graveyard, and then you can swap midfielder out for Mighty Slugger or do the attack thing, whatever you want to do. To special Rival Rebounder during your opponent's turn, all you need to do is use midfielder's ability to switch out Mighty Slugger or another one and special summon. Then you get a special summon from the grave or the hand. So running him at 3 is really good and it improves the playability of the deck. Now the next one is level 7 Dreadnought Dunker. He's 2500 attack, 1800 defense. This guy is really cool because what you do with him is you can attack with him, and when he inflicts damage to your opponent, you destroy 1 card on the field. And the thing that makes him even better is he does piercing battle damage too. So he's already really strong. You can special summon him by returning a card to the hand, and he does piercing, and if he inflicts damage, destroys a card on the field. So, you can just eliminate a field spell or another monster, whatever you need to do. Those are the offensive ones I run. So the only one I don't run is Playmaker, which you can see over here. That's what he looks like. I'll tell you what he does later. Perfect Ace is level 5, 2500 defense, 1500 attack. So what he does, it's during your opponent's turn, you can discard one card in your hand and negate the activation of a card or effect and destroy it. So, anything anything you want to do once per turn, you can do it. And the cool thing is that it's not you don't have to use one UA Perfect Ace ability. If you have two out, you can use both of their like once. So it doesn't limit it that way. And he has a pretty beefy defense too. 2500, that's pretty beefy. Goalkeeper. Goalkeeper is cool. 2800 defense, 1000 attack. He can protect. During your opponent's turn, he protects one UA monster you want. So he can protect himself, he can protect Perfect Ace. Whoever you want, once per turn, it can protect it, and it can't be destroyed by battle or card effects once that turn. So, say they Dark Hole, you can protect Goalkeeper, he won't be destroyed, so what they gotta do is get over 2800, or find another way to get rid of him. Now, UA Blockbacker is basically like a once per turn, he's like lose a turn. So, once per turn, when your opponent special summons a monster, you can change the battle position of that special summon monster and negate the effect. He's 2700 defense too, so really beefy. But the thing is that it's hard with these UAs to get them out. So what you want to do is you want to summon like the offensive ones like Mighty Slugger, Rival Rebounder, Dreadnought Dunker, and then during your main phase 2 you want to switch them out for your defensive ones so you can activate the abilities on your opponent's turn so you can protect yourself. The other two monsters I have in here is a Spell Striker and a Battle Fader. And the reason I have one of each is because I don't really have two Spell Strikers and I don't have two Battle Faders. But, I'm not sure which one I would run two of, because Spell Striker, you banish a card from your graveyard, special summon him, and then you can use him as tribute fodder if you don't have a midfielder. And Battle Fader, you can special summon him when your opponent's monster declares an attack, a direct attack. So he's basically tribute fodder on your turn, unless they get rid of him somehow. So, I'm not sure. I used to run a Playmaker instead, or a Jinzo, and I usually switch out because I'm not sure what I want. When I was doing Playmaker is really cool because once per turn, or not once per turn, it's actually whenever your UA monster declares an attack, he loses 800 attack, and you can have that monster gain 800 permanently until it leaves the field. So that's why I ran him, just to be really offensive. So for my spells, there's Rhoda, or Reinforcement of the Army. And he adds a midfielder to your hand, and he can also add Spell Striker to your hand since he's a warrior. So you kind of need midfielder to run this deck really well. So that's why I have him at 3. UA Stadium is really good. Like, if you get UA Stadium and midfielder out and you go first, you got a really good hand already with just those two cards, or UA Stadium or Rhoda, whatever. Because UA Stadium, when you normal summon, you can add a UA monster from your deck to your hand. So if you normal summon midfielder, you can add any of the defensive ones or offensive ones, whatever you need to your hand for that turn. And then if the first time you special summon a UA monster, all monsters you control gain 500 attack. So it doesn't matter what they are. If you have a Jinzo out or whatever, it gains 500 attack the first time you special summon a UA monster. So if you think Dreadnought Dunker is scary at 25, he'll be 3000 if you special summon, so he'll do even more piercing damage. So it's a really good field spell. So next up is UA Signing Deal. Now UA Signing Deal, it's actually a really good card if you have the life points for it, because you special summon a UA monster from your decks, but its effect is negated. Also, you can't use a Synchro or XYZ, but that's the cool thing with this deck is I've never actually XYZ summoned, XZ summoned, or Synchro summoned. As you can see, I only have 5 monsters in my extra deck, and I've never used one of them. What you do, you special summon from your deck, and then it loses its effect, but you have to pay life points, 300 for each level. So midfielder, you lose 1200, Mighty Slugger, you lose 1500, but it's worth it most of the time to actually get a monster out so you can actually do your plays. It's a really good card. Now, next up, I run 3 UA Power Jerseys. UA Power Jersey is actually a really, really, really good card. Now, you equip it to a UA monster, it gains 1000 attack and defense, and if it battles an opponent's monster, any battle damage inflicted to your opponent is doubled. And then if it destroys that monster, it can make a second attack. So, Dreadnought Dunker, at 35 or 4,000 with the field spell, whatever, and he does piercing, and he can attack again, so you can destroy possibly 2 cards, or even Mighty Slugger. You get 2 attacks where they can't activate Mirror Force or anything. Now the downside of this is that during the standby phase you have to banish the equipped monster, but if you have your monster equipped with this, and then all you gotta do main phase 2 is swap them out for one of the defensive ones, so that monster goes back to your hand. And then when Power Jersey is sent to the graveyard, if the monster that it was equipped to returned to the hand, then it also goes back to your hand. So that's really good. And if you don't have a defensive one, I have a Compulse in this deck. I usually don't use it for my monsters, but if I don't want someone to get banished, then I kind of have to. Next up is the Monarch Stormforth. Now the Monarch Stormforth is really good in this deck since I don't use the extra deck at all. Never used it. Just there in case. So what you do with the Monarch Stormforth is, if you can't get going because you don't have Spell Strike or a midfielder, you use the Monarch Stormforth to, normal summon one of your level 5s or 6s using your opponent's monster. And then if you have the Field Dust spell out, you can still get the search. You can search your deck for another UA monster. If you do Rival Rebounder, you can special from your graveyard or your hand, and it kind of just messes your opponent up by using that. And the cool thing with this card is it doesn't target, so it's basically distributing the monster like you control it, is exactly what it says. So it's a really good card. Next up, 2 Mystical Space Typhoons, just for your opponent's back row, or UA penalty box, which I'll get to in a second. But, just in case. They got Mystical Space Typhoon in there. Reasoning is what you do is your opponent calls a number, 1 through 12, or they just call a level, and if it's that level, you excavate cards from the top of your deck, and if it's the level they call it, say they call it 5, all those cards go to the graveyard, including that monster. But if they call it wrong, all those cards still go to the graveyard, so if they call 4, and you mill like 3 cards, and the first monster you mill is level 5, you get to special summon it, or excavate, my bad. You get to special summon it to your side, so it really improves playability. You can waste some cards, like UA Stadium, Signing Deal. They can go to the graveyard, but if you get a monster out, it's totally worth it. And then Book of Moon, just for, it's just a staple. Same thing with, I run 1 Compulse. It's just a staple. I also run Fiendish Chain. Jeremy from Fubar Gaming, he told me to put that in because he said it's really good in this format, and I don't really go to tournaments that often. So I put it in there. Now, the last trap card I run, and the last card in this deck, is 2 UA penalty boxes. So, penalty box is really cool, because at the start of the damage step, if your UA monster battles an opponent's monster, you can banish that opponent's monster until the opponent's second end phase. So that's if, your opponent's monster attacks your UA monster, or you attack your opponent's, or your UA monster attacks your opponent's. So, you can just banish their monster till their second end phase. And then the cool thing with this card is, if it's in the graveyard, you can banish it and add a UA spell card from your deck to your hand. So you can add a Stadium, a Signing Deal, or a Power Jersey, if you wanted to. All you gotta do is banish it from the graveyard. So if you need a Stadium desperately, or Signing Deal, or Power Jersey, that's really cool. And sometimes I actually MST my own, or I just wait for my opponent to do it if they've never really played this deck and, don't know the traps that well. Because most people think you got a Mirror Force down, or Torrential or something like that. So they'll MST this and they'll send it to the graveyard, and it'll actually pretty much help you out. And the other thing is Dunker. Sometimes you inflict battle damage to your opponent, and then you can destroy penalty box if you really need it, and get a Stadium, Signing Deal, or Power Jersey to your hand. So I think this deck runs pretty well, but there is, stuff you can put in it. For instance, Playmaker, or Jinzo to stop trap cards, or even Kaiser Coliseum. So all you gotta do is control 1 UA monster and keep it that way, and your opponent can't have more monsters than you, as long as you have a monster on the field. So if you have Goalkeeper out, you can protect him, and your opponent can't summon more than 1. So that's a really good play too. Now for the extra deck, which I've never actually used. It's just for emergency circumstances, because usually I'll end up getting a 5 and a 6 or a 7. I'll end up getting different levels out, like almost never two of the same. So first off, I have Ragna Zero. Just detach an XYZ material once per turn during either player's turn, and if your opponent controls a monster whose current attack is different than its original attack, you destroy it and draw a card. So it's just pretty cool like that. You gotta watch out for Ragna Zero and other people's decks, because if you have UA Stadium out or Power Jersey, they can do it during your turn. So you gotta kind of watch out for Ragna Zero. Black Ship of Corn, he detaches one and material, and he sends to the graveyard the monster. So Goalkeeper's ability to protect anyone from being destroyed doesn't work because it sends it to the graveyard. I got a Volcasaurus, which is 2 level 5s. He targets a face-up monster that your opponent controls and destroys it, and inflicts damage to your opponent equal to the destroyed monster's original attack. And then if he does it, he can't attack directly, but he can still attack. So, say your opponent has like 3,000 monster out, 3,000 attack monster out. You can target it, destroy it, inflict 3,000 points of damage to him, and then if they have a monster out, you can still attack with them. So it's pretty cool. Greedy Sarmina, your opponent takes any effect damage you would have taken from card effects instead. So it's pretty cool that way. But if he destroys a monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard, you can detach a material from him, and then any monster on the field with less or equal to attack than the monster destroyed, the monster's original attack of the destroyed monster in the graveyard, you can just destroy all the monsters on the field. So, if you have, beat someone that's 2,000, and you have, like Rival Rebounder, Mighty Slugger, Dreadnought Dunker out, they're safe, and any monster your opponent controls with less than that is just destroyed, so it just opens them up for attack. Next up is Photon Strike Bouncer. Once per turn, he's 2 level 6s, but once per turn during either player's turn, when a monster effect is activated on your opponent's side of the field, you can detach an XYZ material from the card, negate the effect, and inflict 1,000 points of damage to your opponent. So he's just nice to have if you're worried about monster effects. But that's my extra deck I've never used, so you can make your own. That's just what I had lying around. So for the side actually helps against Nekroz, Burning Abyss, sometimes Tellarknights, Shaddolls, Elemental Heroes, and sometimes like Ritual Beast too. It's just like what my local plays. But there's 2 Royal Decrees in there, and it's basically negate all of the trap cards on the field. And I only run Fiendish Chain and Compulse and UA Penalty Box, so even if I do side this in, it's not really going to hurt me, because if I do Penalty Box, I really want his graveyard effect more than anything. Imperial Iron Wall can kind of hurt you if you need penalty boxes, because cards cannot be banished. But you really want to play this against like Nekroz or Ritual Beasts, so they can't get their fusions out and stuff like that. Their contact fusions. Non-fusion area actually won't affect Ritual Beasts, but it does affect Shaddolls and Elemental Heroes. So, you don't want to deal with Construct, non-fusion area. Mirror Force, I just have it in there just in case, it just depends on what I'm playing against. MST, it's always nice to have another Mystical Space Typhoon in your deck. Noble Mana Crossout, it's really good for Shaddol Falco. You target a face-down monster on the field, destroy it, and banish it, and if it was a monster with a flip effect, then each player reveals their main deck, then banishes all cards from it with that monster's name. So you can banish like all 3 of the Shaddolls, of Shaddol Falcos out of a Shaddol deck or anything. So it's really cool. Shared Ride is basically for Nekroz too, because they add a lot of cards to their hand. And Rivalry of Warlords, it helps against Ritual Beasts and anything else with more than one type of monster. So like Burning Abyss, because Dante's not a fiend and all the other Burning Abyss ones are. So it helps us against that. Soul Drain, you pay 1,000 life points, and monsters that are banished and in the graveyard can't activate their effects. So it's always nice to have, even for 1,000 life points. Solemn Warning, I was thinking about maining this, but I kind of like the deck at 43 cards. But I might main it. But, you know, pay 2,000 life points and just negate a summon, or the activation of a card that does summon. And then Flying Seas, or for Satellar Knights, or anything that special summons a lot, which is about everything these days. So, that's my deck, and I really like this deck, and I hope this kind of helps you, even though I was, you know, rambling a lot and stuff like that, but I hope it helped. So if you want to make this deck or have any questions or comments, or, you know, I hope this helped, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Also, don't forget to check out our channel, Junkbox Gaming and Fubar Gaming, for video games and deck profiles. So we'll catch you guys later.